Welcome once again to the Old-Timers Comic Book Show, the show where the hosts aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. As always, joining me this week it is Mr. Peter.
Hey,
Woo!
Johnny, what's up?
He's got his Peaky Blinder on.
I do.
All right, Governor.
Hey, going with my Irish heritage.
How very Bostonian of you.
Yes.
And of course, it wouldn't be the old timers with old cranky pants himself. It is the 13th Crusader. Woo!
Hey.
Greetings, gentlemen.
Oh man, how are you, 13?
I am doing phenomenal.
Phenomenal. All right, okay.
Yes.
Very good.
You didn't know there's 13 letters in phenomenal.
Is there really? Oh,
No,
you
you're
just
gonna
told
count
me
it though.
Yeah, I'm gonna type it and find out now.
I'm as good as I can be despite the Giants losing 10-6 to the Jets in a preseason game.
Well, it's preseason. Who gives a rat's, right?
I do, because it may be the only game they had a chance to win.
Well, the Finns lost to who'd they lose to? Tampa. So the rhetoric of the Dolphins not being able to beat a team with a previously winning record stands sort of in again this year. Very great. But how do the Patriots do after all that?
The Patriots are not playing until tonight. They're playing at 8 o'clock on prime time, which is very strange for a preseason game.
Who are they playing?
They are playing the Commanders.
Oh, we absolutely bounced them last week, so it should be fine. Should be fine. Mind you, their quarterback, their young rookie, looks pretty good. Gotta say, the Commanders. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't seen much of Drake May yet, but he looks okay. But our team does not look good this year. So
You'd be better off getting Justin Fields. At least he can run around when things go wrong.
yeah. I don't know. There's a guy Milton that looks decent, but he's one of those undrafted guys. So
All right.
but they might throw him in there just because they don't care if he's develops.
Yeah.
So
Camp body. Camp body.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Football aside, we're here to talk about comic book, gentlemen, and we've talked about. Do you know when this topic came up, and I was going to say something like it's a granddaddy of all events, but really we've talked about like some of the really big ones, like Crisis. We've talked about some of the DC ones. We forget that Marvel set themselves up for the event and helped create the event cycle that we enjoy so much nowadays, and that's Marvel Superhero Secret Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, this is getting like the title is just bonkers already. I mean, the premise of this. Before we get into the books, Professor, Marvel Superhero Secret Wars sounds like more than a mouthful. So what was the 411 on this? What on earth generated this production?
Toy line. Yeah, I mean, so you had in 1984, you had Marvel and DC both do something exactly like this in the genre. You had DC had launched their Superpowers line of toys that was quickly followed up. The toy line came first, and then the Superpowers limited series, right? And then Marvel had their previous successes with toy line tie-in comic books, right? Like Sectars and Micronauts, and then Krista and Rum, and then and quickly followed by G.I. Joe and Transformers, right? Which is
Star Wars, perhaps you could throw in there.
Exactly. So this is a no-brainer. This was like let's do something that's our biggest heroes. Focus on the prospect of creating a toy line. Now the toy line not really as successful as you would think, right?
They were awful figures.
The figures were awful. On the second wave, none of those characters were even in the book. So,
I googled some images to show the toy line on the show, and I was like getting pictures of Hobgoblin.
Yeah.
I was like, well, he's not in here.
Like Baron Zemo, what the hell? Where did he even come from? Nobody even knew Baron Zemo was, let alone would buy a toy. That was one way to kill that line without coming. I mean, the only X-Man you get is Wolverine out of the whole thing.
Yeah,
That was, I mean, we can talk about the failure of that toy line, which was, I think, a failure of marketing and, creative all day long. But the Superpowers line, much more successful.
Well, this is an interesting point. 13, we've talked about superpowers before. We had
Mm-hmm.
some, Jack Kirby was on there, albeit not
Yep.
every powers, of course. But we talk about Marvel DC. When we talk about toys, we should have Bobo on for this, really. When we talk about toys, it's Kenner versus Mattel,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right?
those were the toy giants of back then for sure.
So Kenner was firmly entrenched with DC Land.
Yeah.
Mattel had just been massively successful with the Masters of the Universe, and they wanted a new toy range to compete with Kenner's superpowers, but not compete with their own He-Man line. So you end up getting these awful figures that are year big. Everyone comes with a shield. What the hell does Spider-Man need a shield for?
It was those special hologram things.
Oh,
That was the extra playability of the toy.
oh really?
But I mean, you were in 1984, and this is where we really kind of earn the Ol'Timers name on our podcast. Walking into a child world or a Toys R Us in 1984 into the action figure aisle where all you saw was Star Wars Return of the Jedi action figures, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, DC Superpowers action figures, and then the Secret Wars figures. I mean, it was that was an amazing time to be a kid. You couldn't buy everything. I mean, and of course, all these figures were not less than $5 a piece. Come on.
Well, over here, Star Wars figures were £1.30, £1.30.
Yeah, like $1.99, right?
Yeah,
like a buck.
yeah. That's exactly kind of how it worked. Transformers, I think, was the one that kind of burst the bank because
Transformers.
Optimus, you could only get the little mini bots for like $2 or whatever. Whether Optimus Prime was the one that everybody wanted.
The real war here was really between the businesses and again, emerging of the minds, if you will, for a business venture where comics and toys were in bed with each other and then competing against each other. So it was definitely not a secret.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a war.
I think, and you know what? Do you know what the sad thing about the whole thing is? Whether you talk about the toy line or whether you talk about the Secret Wars comic book, neither were particularly successful at what they were trying to do. They were both just a little bit ho-hum. And I think that
you know what's funny is that they were marketing tests, and even the word secret and wars tested well amongst kids back then.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you
what they went out with.
I will tell you what was successful about it. It drove toy fans like me into the comic stores to pick up the comic books because I tell you, this is my comic buying habit started in 1984, 85 and was primarily driven by the fact that I loved going into the toy stores. I had a lot of action figures growing up and being able to read about the characters that I had. It was just a natural jump that of course then the comics just took over. So
wow.
Yeah.
So it worked for you. Well done.
Yeah. Jim Shooter's marketing plan worked for this guy. Anyway.
Let's try and get some.
I was the opposite because I had already been reading for a bit. And the first toy that I got for superheroes was a Daredevil action figure, of which he's not even in the series.
Yeah, series 2, yeah. I'm with 13th on this, to be honest. I was reading comics beforehand. I didn't see a lot of the Secret Wars figures kicking around. I barely saw the superpower ones. My figure collection at the time was Star Wars forever. Right.
I had a lot of the superpowers ones.
Right. Oh, here we go then. So, Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars, 12 issues long. 12 issues. We're not going to go through all 12 because we're only here for an hour. So, which do you think, in the speculator world, which do you think is the most expensive, Professor?
Number 8.
13?
I have to agree.
Yeah, number 8. What's so special? I'm going to talk about number 8 in a little while. Number 8, Marvel Superheroes. Number 8, eBay. You can get this anywhere between £170 to £650. Someone is trying to flog this book for £650.
It's not that great.
And it's the blurb in it is Origin of Venom. If you are picking this book up because you think it's the origin of Venom,
No.
you have been sold a pony. You have been sold a $3 bill. It has got jack all to do with Venom, apart from the black suit. That's it.
Yep.
That's all you got.
I mean, very arguable whether or not it's the first appearance too. So
exactly. True that.
It's unbelievable.
Was it 251? It shows up in 251, 252 as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Amazing.
What, sorry?
262.
Yeah. All right, I was close. I was going off memory. Go Collect has the book at $250. There you go. Crazy. Compare that to the issue number 1, which we're going to talk about in a second. You can get that on eBay for somewhere between £50 to £120. A grade 9 on Go Collect averages at $105. Now, I think this is a kick-ass cover, and I love the cover. But the book, I'm not sure it's worth all this. So let's go through the credits before we get into this book. The credits are throughout the books the same, so I'm not going to do it every single time. So listen up, as they say in LOL, I will say this only once. Written by Jim Shooter. Mike Zeck is on art. Mike who?
Mike Zeck.
John Beatty's on inks. Classic Joe Rosen's on letters, and Christy Shell is on colors. I
think it's worth mentioning that Bob Layton too is in the middle of the series.
He is true, correct. Well done, thank you. I am being a bit disingenuous to Mike Zeck. I like Mike Zeck's work. I think his Batman covers on 10 Nights of the Beast were fantastic. So, hey ho. Who picked number 1? 13th, was this you?
Yes, sir.
Is this because there's no 13 issues?
There is a 13th issue. It just hasn't been published yet.
All right, okay, whatevs. All right, so take us through this book.
Yeah, essentially, the cover speaks for itself. And as we were just discussing, at this time, there was a toy craze. There was a craze for marketing. A fever pitch, if you will. So essentially, what can comic books do? And comic books can tell a story. And if you're trying to get a toy line out there, comic books were a good medium to kind of present a good story. But for comic fans, so as I mentioned earlier, I was collecting before the action figure craze and whatnot. So prior to this in Marvel, I never saw so many heroes banded together. And then this is the cover to issue 1. So right away it speaks to the Marvel stable at the time. And at this time, the Avengers enjoyed decent popularity. The X-Men were definitely top of the charts. Spider-Man was definitely the face of the franchise, if you will. And then Mike Zeck delivered on an iconic cover that's been homaged more times than I can count. So that's what you're getting with this cover. I think it's all the characters here are well positioned. They're definitely ready for action. So you can look at it from that angle, and you can also look at it from a marketing perspective that Marvel wasn't going to play around with. They threw the heavy hitters out here, if you will, to display to the world that there's something big is going on here. And also set an example, too, by presenting something in a format that at this time no one was accustomed to, which is the limited issue format. So 12 issues, yeah, it's a lot of issues. But at the time, what was everybody used to? Detective number, who knows what number they were up to. Action Comics was high. Even some Marvel issue titles were high in number by this time. So this was definitely something new in more ways than one, is marketing toys aside. So as far as the story is concerned, this was a big project for Marvel because they were venturing into uncharted territory here. And at the time, the editor-in-chief was Jim Shooter. And he felt that he was the one that could deliver something like this. Say what you want about Jim Shooter, love him or hate him. but he's the one that wrote this. And basically, this was just going to be a big war.
It's an instruction manual how to play with the figures, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think what they're trying to do is, if you're familiar with the comics, you know who the players are. But where the twists and turns come in is the different alliances that form and loyalties get tested, as well as something fantastical where they're all dealing with a big menace that they can't even see. So that menace is called the Beyonder. You won't see him physically in this book, but you'll definitely feel his presence. And this is something new for every Marvel character, villain and hero alike. They're dealing with forces well beyond their comprehension. In fact, they even have Galactus in here, and he's trying to understand what's happening.
So I don't like Galactus as a bad guy. Galactus isn't a bad guy. He's just hungry. You know?
Correct.
If the guy's going to Burger King, he's not doing anything wrong, right?
Well, he wants to have it his way, I guess.
It's like he wants a Burger King, a Big Mac, and a Wendy's. That's Galactus.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of this. Because if you're a reader, I guess as you and I were, Johnny, you know about Galactus at this point. I knew about him. I loved the X-Men at this point. There was no doubt about it. I knew Spider-Man, but I was kind of puzzled with Galactus, and I was puzzled with Magneto of all.
Yes, that's a shout. Why is Magneto on the side of the Angel at the start of this book?
Because he was going through a redemption arc over an X-Men. This is sorry. Yeah. Go ahead, 13.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and there are certain characters in here that what I noticed start developing personality traits I've never seen before, and Molecule Man is a perfect example of that. Where he, like Bud said, that he was going through redemption. Magneto is joining forces with good. Doom is Doom, though, to a degree. Galactus is you're like, why is he here? But you'll learn that later on. But it's a being from beyond, bringing all of these characters into a world that he just creates after annihilating an entire galaxy in front of them as a display of power. So as to kind of showcase that, he's the ultimate threat, and they're an experiment, if you will. So the line is drawn here with good and evil, I guess, for now in issue 1. I think art-wise, the cover, Mike Zeck is a phenomenal cover artist. I enjoyed his covers a lot on the regular Captain America issues. So this cover is of no surprise to his talent. I felt the interiors, though, didn't match the covers. That's if I'm going to say something to critique Mike Zeck. But otherwise, he does a good job of presenting the Marvel stable of characters. It's good enough to get the story across. As far as Jim Shooter is concerned, I guess to kind of sort of defend him, you have to understand the audience. They were targeting young kids at the time who may not have been familiar with the Marvel stable of characters. So it is a basic premise. It's like, okay, let's take everybody away from what they normally do just for a little while and throw them on a planet and see what happens. And also introduce another villain that you can't even see. So sometimes people naturally fear what they can't see. And I guess that's the route I would take from the Jim Shooter script perspective. But there's some very cliche things in here that are unaccustomed. For me, I was already unaccustomed to hearing these characters speak in that way or even act in that way. But as a kid, when I read this for the first time, I was like, I'm so glad I got my hands on this book, because I loved every character that they already had up front, never mind the villains. So I took it for what it was. It was different.
Cool. Good show. So, Professor.
Yes.
Oftentimes, you quite correctly say that DC books of a certain era feel a little bit staid, a little bit kind of run of the mill, stuck in the moment.
Yeah.
A book from the 80s looks like it was written and drawn from a book from the 60s or 70s.
Yeah.
Does that not work on this book? Is that not a great description for this? Because it's like, to me, I agree with 13 to an extent. Mike Zeck's cover art is gorgeous, without a shadow of a doubt. His interiors don't work as well, but is that because Jim Shooter is like layering bubble after bubble after bubble after?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, see, the thing is that it's a kind of a simple story, but there's so many characters in it that it makes it is a bit busy, right? Because there's so many characters, it's tough to keep everybody straight. And I told you this was one of my first exposures to comics, and it's not like I had never read a comic before, but a lot of these characters, like I didn't know who the X-Men were when I picked this book up. I didn't know. I knew about some of the. I mean, I knew Captain America, Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and that was about it. I didn't really know the Avengers either.
I think I didn't know
Surprisingly
Captain
enough.
Marvel. I didn't know Captain.
Yeah,
I didn't know it was Captain Marvel.
The things, there was a lot of stuff going on in Marvel at the time, story wise, that Jim Shooter had to actually kind of catch you up on. As far as the Fantastic Four being -1 because the Invisible because Sue was pregnant, right? The Avengers are all a few new characters, right? She-Hulk, Captain Marvel. I had no idea who Hawkeye was, surprisingly.
He's your favorite.
Well, he is.
Wonder Man.
He is. You have Jim Rhodes as Iron Man, which they don't, they touch on. Of course, kind of the way they touch on it is kind of weird as far as are you surprised there's a black man under this armor?
Well, it's just I was thinking more of the way he hits on Captain Marvel. So
right.
he goes, hey babe, and she's like, it's Captain Marvel, don't call me babe. And then she flies off. Thinking, I thought Iron Man was sophisticated. He comes off like a bozo. I'm like, oh, okay. That's because I didn't realize that it was, and I read that. I was like, oh, it's Jim Rhodes. Oh, of course it is. Yeah, but still, hey ho.
Right. So, yeah, and I thought for the marketing towards new readers, which I was at this time, that this book worked amazingly well. And we'll get into when we talk about the book that I picked about the different factions that end up coming out of this. And but I think this first issue, great setup. It kind of catches you up, introduces you to all these different villains, most of whom I had no idea who they were. But going forward, some of them are kind of window dressing. Yeah. Most of them are there and have a purpose to be in the book. So, I thought it was interesting.
A couple of things
I just want to mention one thing. So for all of these for those that were reading books prior to this, a lot of these individual characters who had their own runs or were in team books suddenly came to an abrupt halt, meaning a pause where heroes would disappear. So Marvel was certainly leading up to this. So the readers kind of got a heads up something was coming down the line. And then this event came out.
Yeah, I remember Spider-Man swinging into Central Park and poof, off he went.
Right.
Couple of things that I noticed reading this and subsequent books of this run. The Hulk's quite chatty.
Yeah.
What? Hulk wasn't chatty back then.
Yeah, he was in his book, and there was a storyline going on during Hulk where he had gotten the brain of Banner. So that's actually Banner in Hulk's body. Cool. But you see, and of course you see throughout this, but that's another thing that I was going to bring up, which we can mention now. Just that 13 said, the buildup was up until the point where Secret Wars 1 came out. The very next month, they all came back, and there was the spoilers released for everything that was going to happen in Secret Wars. All those changes took effect when effectively issue 2 came out on the stands. You already knew how it ends. You already knew all the changes. But did that stop anybody from buying this book? No. In fact, I think it actually drove people towards picking it up because I need to see how the heck did the Thing not come back, and why is the She-Hulk on the Fantastic Four, and what's this black costume, and what's all these different things that were going on just made me want to buy Secret Wars even more to find out
And,
why.
Why doesn't
Professor-
Enchantress have her own series? Because she looks hot as. No, sorry.
And I will just add to that the only time I ever saw this many heroes gathered together, for me at this time, was the death of Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
So, but here we are. This is an event now, not a circumstance.
Yeah.
Cool. There you go. So issue 1 sets the scene, sets the table. We have the Beyonder taking out Galactus. We have the lines drawn in the sand, good versus evil, which is pretty much how it always works in comic books, for a large portion. Whilst we get ready for the next book we're going to look at in this run, time for a break for one of our other shows. And because it's linked to toys, it makes sense. Where is it? There it is. It makes sense that we go and check out the Crisis in the Toyverse. There you have it, Crisis in the Toyverse with Bobo. Check it out for all the cool figures and stuff that come out his way. Next up is the Professor's Choice. And I have to say that this is, of the Secret Wars books, this is the one that I owned through the UK. Back then, Marvel didn't have a UK presence unless you went to specialist comic book shops, so you had UK reprints. So I had this in a weekly reprint. We've talked about this before. That means I got 4 pages. Can you imagine getting 4 pages of Secret Wars and then having to wait another week to get another 4? Are we crazy? Really?
That's nuts.
That is nuts. It is bonkers. And I remember because I love the opening panel.
Yeah.
There you go. That absolutely brings back memories like nobody's business. Yeah. All right, cool. Professor, this is your choice. Take it away.
This is where I kind of think the Secret Wars story actually kind of blows up a little bit and actually becomes really super interesting, because I liked, in the first issue you see good guys, bad guys, right?
Right.
And you're like, oh, well, what's going to happen there? Going to be like, how's Galactus going to be a bad guy, or why is Magneto with the good guys? And here, they've basically burst into factions, right? You had Magneto leave the good guys team because no one would accept him there. But then later on this issue, you see that the heroes kind of, the X-Men feel like they don't belong with the heroes. So now, okay, well, we're going to leave the heroes and we're going to go join Magneto. Can you imagine Chris Claremont writing something like that in the pages of his own book? But here, like, strange bedfellows and all that stuff, right? So you got to do what you got to do in war. So now you have your bad guys who Dr. Doom has basically put them under his thumb, right? Which you kind of expected that he was going to do. So you have that faction. You do have kind of Galactus, who's off doing his own thing. You realize, hey, he's going to build this thing. He's going to eat the planet. We know that's coming, right?
Planet for 1, table 2.
Exactly. And then of course you have the good guys who have kind of split. And that actually, and you find out in this issue really that that makes the heroes a bit vulnerable, doesn't it? So this was where I kind of thought things got really interesting, and you had some interesting dynamics, like you had Magneto and Wasp. That's a kind of a matchup you never expected to see, There you have the first appearance of a couple of characters, Titania and Volcana. where Doctor Doom creates, for the express purposes of possibly adding females to the ranks of the villains, other than Enchantress. And then of course you see, like, I love this little page with Thor, who kind of, I think Jim Shooter did a good job of making him act kind of godlike.
Yeah.
In this issue where he busts in, like, and takes Enchantress away from, because Enchantress was imprisoned with the good guys, and he took her away, as in, like, there's things that only gods can talk about.
Yeah.
Only gods will understand, which I thought was interesting.
I like that Hawkeye panel at the bottom of that page.
Yes. Yeah. It's and then of course, well, the big issue in here, a couple of things with the X-Men. Spider-Man overhears them talking about going to join Magneto, and probably never seen again in the history of comics, Spider-Man wipes the floor with the X-Men, and always this always made me wonder what Claremont thought. Geez, like he's making my guys look like chumps, and they do kind of look like they haven't been a team in a day and a half. You see Professor X out of the wheelchair, which is different. That's what I like. Like I said, one of these things is different, like different stuff that you don't normally see. So
why is he out of the wheelchair? And did someone give him?
It was it was an effect of Battle World, the same effect that Ben Grimm was transformed out from the thing back to Grimm, right? So it was a different thing. The different way the planet was acting was kind of making things different for people, which I thought was fine. But it was just doing these little things, right?
Right.
So, then there was a couple of things, like I said, later on in the issue, the bad guys attack, and it looks like they take out a couple of the heroes. So that was interesting. Magneto and Wasp smooching. There's a couple of these villains. You kind of think, like I said earlier, the villains were kind of, some of them were window dressing. Kang never really does anything, right? He takes Doctor Doom out in the first issue, but then quickly, that didn't work. But later on, and I don't know if we'll even cover this issue, but Doctor Doom supposedly kills Kang. You have Ultron basically reset after his first issue when he tries to kill all the villains that he's with. Doctor Doom basically resets him, and now he's Doom's bodyguard. I never really thought they did much with Dr. Octopus, even though Dr. Octopus, like, arguably Spidey's big villain. They don't really do anything with him in here. He's just a flunky. The Wrecking Crew and the Absorbing Man, of course, flunkies. The Lizard, who appears in the first issue, doesn't really appear again until issue 6. When
he
they
slithered away.
Yeah. Well, they bring back when they bring back Claw, who you didn't know was going to be in it, but Doctor Doom brings him out one of the machines. So I thought it was interesting. I thought it was interesting that the heroes get caught flat-footed, pretty much. And that explains why the villains take them out so easily. Like, you see, like, Iron Man's putting his armor on. Like, come on.
It's funny because, I mean, there's some continuity glitches. In the first issue, there's some coloring mishaps and stuff. I mean, even this panel, we're looking at this panel here, right? And Captain Marvel's in the pool, and you can see that the tiles are yellow, quite clearly yellow. She then has gotten out of the pool and is fully dressed. Well done. And everything's purple. It's like, dudes, come on, look what you've just, and then
they're yellow in the next bit, in the next panel.
Oh, it's just crazy, just crazy. Is Spider-Man overpowered?
I think Jim Shooter throughout this series made Spider-Man extra special.
Extra Spider.
For the X-Men, makes sense.
Yep. I mean, he takes out Titania, he takes out Absorbing Man, he takes out the X-Men, and all of them are just shocked at how fast he is, and why can't I lay a hand on him? Like Spidey saying, you could, like, what do you calling Wolverine? You can't lay a hand on me, bub, or whatever. You can't, you're just, those pig stickers can't touch me.
Well,
Come on.
don't get me started. I mean, this is comic code, so Wolverine's not going to be able to stab anybody. But I mean,
Well,
Spider-Man doesn't have that much interaction with the X-Men. We only talked about it recently when he was in the Marvel Team Up book.
yeah.
And that was one of the few times they'd worked together. So, fine.
Well, that's the thing that I liked about this too, is up until this point, 1984. Remember, how many times have you seen the Avengers with the X-Men?
Hardly ever at this point.
Right, like close.
Only when Beast is in there. Beast was when Beast joined the Avengers.
But I've said before, the X-Men, when Claremont had them, they basically were in their own little pocket universe and really didn't interact with much outside of that. So seeing them with the Fantastic Four or with the Avengers, this was special. And it's and after this, it's still the same thing. You don't really that's a special event when they get together.
True that. 13th, book 3. Interesting fulcrum point book for you?
I think so. Again, at this cover, it speaks to the time of what was going on in Marvel. Like all the characters on that cover were their top sellers.
Let me get back to the cover. There we are.
So these are among Marvel's top sellers, and obviously most popular. Wolverine wasn't as popular as he is today, but he definitely garnered interest. So did the X-Men. They were among the best-selling books. So in contrast to issue 1 and maybe some of the other issues in this series altogether, Mike Zeck's cover art, I felt, was not as good as the interior in this particular issue. So to me, it felt a little different. To what the professor said earlier, there's some panels in here that are very well drawn. I agree with him on the Thor scene. I think those are the best panels. Even a couple of panels where the characters are in close-up were much, much better. To me, that speaks to real Mike Zeck art.
Yeah.
So
when actually delve into the character, not just have to deal with mirror the dialogue that's on the book. Cool. Go on.
In the story we're talking about here with Battle World, it's no one knows what Battle World is outside, but neither do the artists. So they can get away with a variety of backgrounds unless they're in their headquarters. So I think that kind of works to an artist's advantage. And here you still see, a showcase, if you will, of what, like Spider-Man, as we mentioned, overpowered maybe, perhaps, taking on the X-Men. But it's more than that. Like Bud said, the introduction of other characters. But I felt Doom was much more consistent by the time this issue rolled out. And you can see the machinations he has in mind. And he's gathering an army together, but he still stays true to his nature, as I said earlier.
Cool. You're right. I think the close-up pages, panels work a lot better than I mean, look at this top one. This is just kind of, we're talking about I suppose, the differences when we talk about the art of the book. There is no reason why those two characters need to be that small to get that level of dialogue. And yet this next panel, that's a really good panel. Cyclops there and Reed's there. Again, another group shot here, which is absolutely lame-o. But then Professor looks really great again. So it's this kind of, the stylings that don't help the book. It's obvious age from that point of view, but I think I agree that this is the kind of subplots that we'd like to see in the book. But do they continue? Do they manage to actually play out, or is it just another? Is it elongating the big story for the big fight? I think I like the issue 3. I thought it was an interesting read. I like the Magneto being a bit of a smooth talker, that he is. So that was cool. For the completists in us, let me tell you. Let me find my notes. There they are. This book, number 3, is anywhere up to around £70 mark on eBay. A grade 9 on Gold Collect goes for around $50. Some of the prices are greater in the UK than they are stateside. I would surmise that is pretty much a supply and demand thing. Back then, as I said, Marvel didn't have its own its presence in what you call mom and pop stores, the convenience stores that they have stateside. So we didn't have a newsstand. So there you go.
To see Spider-Man swat Wolverine away like a fly.
Well, I think Wolverine's probably.
For some.
I think for me, Wolverine's probably the character that gets a little bit short-shafted in this by far. A couple of things before we get into my pick. I just want to talk a couple of covers. Hulk moving a mountain. I'm sure I've seen that in a movie somewhere.
That's one of my favorite covers of the whole series.
That is a gorgeous cover. That works really well. Yeah, I like that a lot. 13?
He's definitely solid. No pun intended.
Killing me, man.
Yeah.
That's 6. So 6. This is kind of like an introverted version or an inversed version of issue 1. Let's have it. Boom. There you go. So rather than have the heroes, we're now getting the villains. It's nowhere near as good as the superhero one in issue 1. But what's so special about this book? Anyone tell me?
Is this the issue where they kill off the Wasp?
No.
For an issue?
It might be. Well, for an issue, no. There's a first appearance in this book.
Is there? It's the Julia Carpenter Spider-Woman.
Yeah, it's the Julia Carpenter Spider-Woman. Well, you say it's the Julia Carpenter Spider-Woman. In fairness, I looked through this book like 3 or 4 times to try and find out where she is. In essence, she is, let me find the panel.
It's a shadow appearance.
That's her. That's classed as the first appearance.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what? How is that possible?
Oh, really? They call that Julia Carpenter. They call that Spider-Woman's first appearance.
Yep, that's Spider-Woman's official first appearance. Even though in number 7, the first panel, of course, is her in the black and white suit. So there you go. And I Googled it several times. I've checked different websites just to get that information. And yes, that is still classed as her first appearance. Issue 6.
Surprised there's not a big argument about that. I mean, it's because she's not that popular. You know?
Don't say that. I quite liked her.
Oh, well, I liked her too, but
until Force works.
She's not even Spider-Woman anymore. She's Madam Web.
Oh, well, there you go. Right, of course. When we talk about Secret Wars, when we talk about Marvel Superhero Secret Wars, longest title of the book award goes to. There's only one issue that really, really kind of garners any attention of most speculators, and it's this classic cover. This is the number 8, as we said at the top of the show, 170 to 650 pounds. You're bonkers if you pay anywhere near 650 for this. Go Collect have it at $250. Even that's tight. Do you know what I found really surprising though? There's a host of facsimiles of this cover, and they're going for like crazy prices as well, like $10, $15 for a facsimile of a book. I'm like, hold on a second, it's a copy of a book, and you're still paying stupid.
The interior art of the first page of the first appearance of the Spider-Man black costume sold for, do you know how much, a few years ago?
No, would you like to inform us?
Yeah, $3 million someone paid.
Shut up, someone paid?
For the original art of the first appearance of the black costume. Yep, I remember that. Coming out.
Or was it from the two?
No, the last page of this issue.
Hang on then.
That page right there.
I've got that one.
Spoiler alert.
That one. Yeah. Someone paid $3 million for that original art page. Mike Zex put that out on his I think it was his Twitter feed a few years ago, because of course he was like, yeah, and of course I didn't see a dime of that.
Well, of course it's work for you.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that's that was amazing to me, because I think that was the most at that point the most ever paid for a page of original art.
I think it's spectacular.
Yeah.
If you think it's amazing, I think it's spectacular.
I think it's sensational.
Any more for any more? No? All right. All in fair one. All right. So this is number 8. We can see that Jack Abel has joined and Mike Esposito has joined the creative ranks as inker on this, which just goes to show something. If you like your Marvel history as I do and the professor does as 13th, we will know that this book, like most things that Jim Shooter got involved in, ended up being rewritten to God knows how high, and the art wasn't quite right, and everything had to be redone. So eventually, Mike Zeck just couldn't keep up with, allegedly, couldn't keep up with the pace. So hence, more people got involved.
Mike Zeck was having his own little demons going on during this period, so there's other reasons where he kind of dropped the ball.
I'm not sure he dropped the ball's the right frame on this one. I think fair play. Other demons going on. Obviously, I don't know Mike personally, so that's why I said allegedly. But I think it's also the environment that he was working in doesn't help. When you've got. I mean, let's just think about this. Just put our logic heads on for a second. You've got the editor in chief writing a book, and you've got Tom DeFalco who's writing Spider-Man at the time, the editor of this book. So what we're saying is, Jim Shooter's editor telling him, no, you can't write this, could be fired at any time. How much power and influence do you think the editor is going to have over Jim Shooter?
Oh, zero. Nobody told Jim Shooter what to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, you know what, it's just not going to, help proceedings. If you're doing the art in a book, you'd expect that book to be, you trust your collaborators, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to the point where you'd like to think that everyone's on the same page. Just so happens that Jim Shooter was on the same pages. But still, hey ho. So this is yet another battle, another part of the war. Spider-Man gets his suit torn up a little bit. We see Julia Carpenter in action. Hawkeye actually stabs somebody with an arrow. That's interesting. Why is it Captain Hulk and Enchantress? Good old trope there for sure. Why does Captain America's shield always change size? I didn't realize that was one of its powers.
Rush job.
I don't know. And sometimes how he holds it like flat. And you're like, what? The arm doesn't bend that way, how? But lo and behold, Spider-Man starts getting his comeuppance with all this stuff going on. It is pretty much a fight issue all the way through, more so than the others that we looked at. Still, everything's going okay. And then, of course, Spidey gets his new clobber. And that's pretty much it. That's all goes on in this. And you'll take us on this? No? 13th, what was your take on this book?
Well, I think it's important for the viewers to understand that this is the first chronological appearance of the alien costume, as Professor mentioned earlier. That the regular series you would have seen by now that he already debuted in his black costume in Amazing 262. So while everybody was oohing and eyeing and wondering what the hell was going on, the new Spider-Man, well, now you get to learn how it happened, and this is basically what that explains. But yeah, the story from the the big picture here is that there's a war going on, so of course there's going to be battling and things like that. The Enchantress trying to seduce the Hulk won't be the last time we see that. In fact, you can see that in an animated form in Thor versus Hulk.
And Hulk in the Avengers cartoons, yeah.
Correct, and in the Avengers cartoons. So you're getting treated to, new characters. You get to see some of them in action. You get to see some powers going on. Some of them looked a little overpowered still. Some of them didn't. But nonetheless, it's an action issue. I felt that the artwork here was much looser than in the previous issues, and maybe perhaps unfinished.
Yeah, that Ultron looks awful. I had to look twice. I was like, is that Ultron or is it Rom? I can't work it out. Awful, you're right. The art just does not cut cut the mustard for whatever reason.
Yeah, but this new suit for Spider-Man definitely got a lot of attention because the original costume was considered iconic. Remember, I said earlier, he was the face of the franchise, if you will, and now you're totally going in a direction where, what's going on. It's a black suit. What is this symbolizing? And we'll learn years later that Spider-Man did become a darker character in more ways than one.
So let me put it to the vote. Which suit do you prefer? Do you prefer the original red and blues, or do you prefer the black suit? And notice I said black suit, not the symbiote suit. So, Professor?
Well, I prefer the red and blue because that's the classic, right?
Right.
At this point in time, when he got the black costume, I was intrigued, and it led to me starting to buy Spider-Man for the first time. I would tend to think if any artists you met would probably enjoy the black costume over the red and blue one.
Over the webs.
Yeah.
13.
I like the black costume more for this era, especially in the pages of Peter Parker's Spectacular Spider-Man when he was running around with the black cat. It made so much sense because he was with someone who was semi-corrupt, who's also trying to redeem herself at the same time. But it made sense for the type of adventures they were going through. And Spider-Man's world was getting darker, but I was fascinated that such a simple design worked. And I was very, very, very impressed with how the webbing worked, as we will learn later on, and the fact that he can will the costume to come on and come off. It made more sense because, I mean, look at this issue where, hold on, guys, wait a minute, I got to put my armor on, or and then or anyone else. But for Spider-Man, he willed it. It was a new sleek look for him, and it made more sense considering that a lot of his adventures took place at night. So I can go on and on, but overall, yes, to draw, much, much easier.
Here's a question. Here's another question for you. Then, before we take a break from this book and look at another cover that I want to talk about briefly, do you feel then? Here's a question. Do you feel then that when they redesigned or introduced a new Spider-Woman in Julia Carpenter and gave her that costume that's on the screen right now, they thought, man, that costume looks great. I wish Spider-Man had something like that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened, and I think but I think they wanted all of these characters to come out of Secret Wars slightly changed to up the sales on the other books, which is why you got them all come back the first month before you even got all the issues of the series out. And so it made you want to read Secret Wars to like, how the hell does he get the black costume? That was one of the big questions.
And of course, it made Mattel make another figure. So, hey, you got to go and buy out another figure now. Can't just get the red and blue Spider-Man.
Can you imagine a story like Kraven's Last Hunt with Spidey in the red and blue suit?
God, no.
Right? So for that reason alone, what a great costume design. And it was so simple.
Yeah. There's something that I think resonates for me that the 13th said is that in Spectacular Spider-Man, the black costume works. And I think that's because I think we've said it before, Spectacular Spider-Man was the mature Spider-Man book. It's a lot darker than like Amazing Spider-Man's your summer blockbuster. Yeah. Your Web is your kind of like indie film that you might watch, you might not. Not really much happens. It's an indie film, but Spectacular was the one that kind of, was the one where the serious stuff happened for sure.
I mean, look at it this way. Like I said, they gave him a new look. No one ever thought that they would change the iconic Spider-Man uniform. Yeah. Here they did with success. Imagine if they did that with Superman. Oh, wait, that's a joke.
You're killing me. Right, okay. So, as a special gift from me to 13, I would like to recognize this cover as simply gorgeous. I know how much of a Doom fan 13 is, so. Buddy, I thought we'd talk about this cover just for a bit because I know how much you love Doom. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What a great cover. This, for me, this shows the indomitable will that is Doom.
Yep.
You know, it's absolutely bang on perfect for me. You know, we talk about Magneto being arrogant and being whatever, but for me, Doom and Galactus doesn't do bad things. He just eats. Doom's maybe not as generous as that for as a description, but generally speaking, leave him alone. He'll leave you alone unless your name's Reed Richards.
Yeah, I think this series really helped Doctor Doom in more ways than one, as if he needed it. And this wouldn't be the last event where Doom inserts himself at the center of attention, even for a little while in a series, right? We'd see that later on with Infinity Gauntlet and other Marvel events that will come out after this. But I mean, Doom was definitely a force to be reckoned with. And I think this cover totally represents that visually.
Definitely. Professor, anything to add on this one?
Nope, 13 got it all. This is one of my favorite covers of the whole series. And yeah, it shows you that even a villain can look heroic.
Yeah, exactly right. Because a true bad guy is the Beyonder because there's no point to what he actually wants. You know, it's that line in Star Trek V where Captain Kirk says, "Why does God need a spaceship?" You're like, oh yeah, fair point. So who was the winner then? Who won the secret Marvel Superhero Secret Wars? Which characters came out on top? Because there must be more than just one. Surely to God.
I don't know.
Can anyone remember who won?
Well, Doctor Doom beat the Beyonder, and then
Uh-huh.
became the Beyonder, right? And then he brought all the heroes back to life, and then
That was nice of him.
yeah, but then he lost. Then he lost it at the end. So, you know, I think everybody survived. Everybody got home safe. You know, and
Molecule Man, did he not win? I thought didn't he go? He had a big.
he won the girl. He won the girl at the end, right?
Yeah, there you
So
go.
Yeah,
I would
she
say,
was pretty hot.
and I feel like if you want to say which character got the most development in this, it's Molecule Man, 100%, right?
Right.
I mean, he was just a just a run of the mill bad guy until this, and now and he becomes one of the main characters in Secret Wars 2 that spawned.
So why? We were doing so
Demonically
well. We were doing
after
so
this.
well, and you had to say that and say, "Oh my God."
Hey, we were talking about event books. This is one of the first event books. This is the first, and this is the first event book that spawned a sequel. So,
But it's Secret
I'll,
Wars 2.
I'll tell you what, I think the winner of all this really is Doctor Doom, because from the beginning all the way throughout and at the end, it's a journey of Doctor Doom, of what happens when you have absolute power. So he definitely had always craved that, but why? He had his own internal struggles. He had his mom trapped by Mephisto. He had plans. Plus, he was brilliant, despite being thwarted by the Fantastic Four many, many times. This definitely propelled him, as if he needed it, to become really a Hall of Fame villain. And at the end of the day, he got to a point where he unlocked the secrets of the universe. Like, what mortal villain had reached that or attained that? So this definitely, I think, propelled Doctor Doom to a level where, man, if they ever did another event and Doctor Doom is involved, you better watch out. Remember, you had Magneto in here, you had Kang in here. These guys are also very powerful and famous villains in their own right, but they paled in comparison to Doctor Doom in this series.
True.
So when you look up Doctor Doom's resume, this definitely comes up to Secret Wars, because I think he stood out above them all.
Well said.
and I think that the books got a shot in the arm. The regular monthly books got a shot in the arm from people picking up books that they wouldn't normally pick up, like a Black Costume Spider-Man or a Fantastic Four that had She-Hulk in it. Which John Byrne knocked out of the park. I loved She-Hulk on Fantastic Four. Some of the Avengers books, and of course X-Men just kind of kept rolling along, right?
Yeah.
So. So yeah, and then I think the only book that might have suffered really was Hulk, because Hulk came back and they instantly turned him savage again, and then had the whole Crossroads, which I kind of think was.
And the The Thing got his own run right after this.
I know.
Yep.
That was a
Yeah,
significant moment.
talked about that.
Yep.
Yeah, actually, the Thing had his own run, which is split because one issue the Thing disappears into Battle World, and then the next issue he's Ben Grimm, Space Ranger, or Rocky Grimm, Space Ranger,
Oh my
for
God.
like a year. Yeah,
Right.
that was
You know.
fun. I mean, I thought it was fun, but you know,
Right. If you have suggestions for any books you would like us to cover on the show, these are our Twitter handles. Yes, I've called it Twitters. We're the Ol'Timers. We're not going to call it X. That's the way it works. Soz. So by all means, drop us a line separately, individually, whatever, just so you can let us know what books you'd like us to cover. Remember, the gig has to be 25 years or older. All right? Don't be coming up and saying, Machine, can you do Final Crisis #1? No, we can't. All right?
talk to us in 15 years.
Yeah.
Hey, Machine, if I could take 13 seconds here. For those that know about the Secret Wars, there was actually kind of a semi-sequel in the What If run in Volume 2, Issue 114, where it was a 25 years later issue from Secret Wars, where what if they had the hero, all of these people stayed on Battle World, so they eventually had kids and things like that. Worth a look for those that really, really enjoyed the series. It's kind of a little continuation on a what if level.
What?
Yeah.
All right, okay, cool. Thank you for that. Who's the artist on that? Can you remember? Writer artist?
The writer is Jay Fairver, if I remember pronouncing it right.
Cool.
Greg Schiegel.
All right, okay, cool.
Artist.
There you go. Go check it out. Those what ifs can be either fantastically brilliant or fantastically bad.
Mm-hmm.
So
Very
pick your
true.
poison.
That's right.
That's fine. And of course, if any of you Marvel fans really do like the Secret Wars, which is absolutely fine, there's some good points in it. You know full well that they've gone back and done some retro stuff recently with Spider-Man in the black costume in the Secret Wars. The things that happen between the panels. Ooh. And that's why we're no longer in No Prize Podcast.
One of the reasons.
Lucas, we love you. We miss you, Lucas. So bear that in mind. All right, that's it for another show. We'll be back in a fortnight when the NFL season will have kicked off, give or take. At least we'll have some games done by then. And then, of course, we can talk about some comics as well. My thanks go to the Professor.
Thank you, Johnny, as always.
13th Crusader.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
Always, man, always. And that's it for the show. Don't forget to check out the UCPN for all the shows that you know and love. They're all on there. And of course, you can always check out Crisis in the Toyverse. As for me, I'm your host, Johnny Machine Hughes. It's that time again. Adios.